Here's a super fun direct setup built around the Fractal AM4 and the Eventide H90. I've had a bunch of requests for this one, so let's dive straight in. The first setup we'll take a look at is the most straightforward. It's simply connecting the H90 in the AM4's stereo insert loop. This is going to place the H90 at the end of the chain. So I would use the AM4 for my amp block, and then anything I want in front of the amp block. At the moment, I have a wah, a phaser set to the Stripe 90 type, and a drive block set to the Jam Ray. I'm using the ODS 100 clean amp model. Let's just have a listen to that on this Sir Modern Pro. I'm currently on the split neck pickup. Awesome sounding amp model in there. If I wanted to, I could add that Jam Ray for some more drive. Let's just roll with the amp block for now. I'm going to switch over to H90 control, and a very straightforward setup here would just be to use the H90 for some reverb and delay at the end of the chain. So I have the vintage delay set up for a Van Halen style dual delay, 400 milliseconds of delay on one side, 800 on the other. Then I'm using the SP 2016 reverb set on the stereo room. Let's just bring in the reverb and then the delay. Instantly tasty. I love the way that sounds. I've swapped over to channel B in the amp block now. This is using the Brit 800 2203 high, a classic Marshall JCM 800 style tone. Let's say I didn't want or need reverb on here. What I'm going to do is add a classic Eventide effect, some micro-pitch for some stereo width. So the first thing I'm going to do is swap the order of these two algorithms in here so that my delay is at the end of the chain. Then what I'm going to do is swap out this SP 2016 reverb. Let's go into the harmonizer. Let's go for the H910 H949 algorithm. This one sounds a little crustier and a bit more old school in here. What I can do is go to my preset library and select my user presets under the harmonizer settings. So let's do that. Fairly certain I've got a 949 D-tune. There it is. Beautiful stuff. I absolutely love the way the D-tune sounds in everything Eventide. So what I'll do is I'll turn both of these algorithms off. We'll kick in the D-tune for some stereo width and girth, and then the vintage delay. Let's take that one step further and chuck on a circular style delay that I made with the Headspace delay type. I'll go over to AM4 Edit and go to Channel C, where I've got the FAS Stealth Blue amp model in there. I'm also going to kick on a phaser. So the phaser is before the amp. I've then got this wonderful micro pitch happening and some circular delay. That's a very addictive sound to play with, and you can hear that H910949 algorithm in there. It's not quite as accurate. It does sound quite modulated compared to a very slick modern D-tune. There is a modern style D-tune in there, of course, but I like that sort of early 80s feel you get out of that particular D-tune. I've gone back to the clean ODS amp model in the AM4. It's such a great platform for playing with ambient effects, and we've got a lot of those in the H90. There's the new granular style effects. I've got the cosmic web loaded up, and then I've got the prism shift in here as well. I'll just take you through a couple of my favorite combinations of the various pitch and ambient style reverbs in here. And you know what? Because this is all happening in stereo, I'm going to place a stereo delay, this new surround delay type, after the amp block and run it into these H90 effects. So let's just hear the surround delay, and then we'll kick in the cosmic web and the Viewmaster. Another way to set all of this up would be using the 4 cable method so that you can place one algorithm from the H90 before the AM4 and one in the insert loop. You could achieve this with the dual routing mode on the H90, or you could set up the AM4 as an insert on there. Just as a quick example on here, I've set up my presets. So I've just got a phaser in front of the Brit 800. I do have a chorus and a delay in the AM4, but what I'm going to do on the H90 is put in this awesome pitch fuzz algorithm that sounds absolutely filthy, and then put detune at the end of it. Let's have a listen to what that does. First, the H90 effect. You could also use something like the polyphony algorithm to tune your guitar down while still using MICROPITCH at the end of the chain, and some effects from the AM4. I've still got the delay on in the AM4. Personally though, if I was going to be using the H90 in a live setup, I'd use it as a sidecar in the insert loop for some extra time-based effects. Probably for some micro-pitch and either a delay or some ambient pitched reverbs in there when I need them. I've been doing a bunch of gigs with the AM4 on its own, and it covers pretty much everything I would need. So having the H90 there just for some bonus grease would be really lovely. You could of course set it up in this dual or insert mode and play around with effects before the AM4 and in the insert loop on there. It's a pretty lush rig. I think personally, if you were going to spend that much money on a solution and size wasn't an issue, just going the whole hog and getting an FM9 would probably be a more cost-effective method on there. Even instead of the H90, the VP4 is a great sidecar solution as well. But one thing that I love about the H90, all those algorithms sound so sweet straight out of the box. So you really don't have to do too much tweaking. You just play around with a few factory presets in there. The micro-pitch sounds awesome. You know, we love micro-pitch because of Eventide and some of the pitch effects, those new granular sounds in there. Yes, it is a pretty expensive pedal, but it can cover so much ground on there. I think with the latest update, you know, you could replace a bunch of things with it in the same way that like a VP4 or an AM4 or an FM3 or an FM9 would do all of those things as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you're using with the AM4. Would you go and grab something like an H90 so you've got access to some different flavors by a different company? Would you add a VP4? Would you just add nothing to it and gig with it? Or would you lean into it and go for something like an FM9 at that price point? Let me know in the comment section below. If you want to support what I'm doing, links in the video description. You can even grab my free IR there as well. I'm going to play you all out with this polyphony set up for a POG style effect, and of course some detune and delay. See you next time.